This is a PowerPoint presentation on Feminist Jurisprudence by Molly. Before I discuss why I think feminist jurisprudence is the right view of the law, I first want to define what feminism is. And as you can see on my PowerPoint slide here, I have written, all feminists agree that women's status in society should be equal to those of men's. And an article that I found sort of backing this up on the internet was written by a Dr. Linda J. Lacey, and she describes feminism as all feminists agreeing on two things. And the first is our society today is patriarchal in the sense that it has been shaped by and continues to be dominated by white men. As a result of this patriarchal structure, women do not have as much power as men, are not treated in the same way as men, do not enjoy the same degree of control over their lives as men, and in general are relegated to a subordinate status. And then the second thing that all feminists agree on is women's current subordination in our society is not desirable. Women should have as much power as men and enjoy equal opportunities in every aspect of their lives. Okay, so there are four different types of feminism. You have radical as the first, liberal, conservative, and lastly, progressive. Feminism falls on a spectrum, sort of, ranging from the most radical feminists to a more liberal yet conservative type of feminism. I'm going to start on the left-wing side and just make my way to the right. So first we have radicals. The radical feminists believe that the patriarchy still exists in Western societies, that the government may legitimately interfere with the so-called private sphere of individual liberty, and in order to eliminate the patriarchy, the government may treat women according to different rules, such as, special treatment, like what we talked about in class, I think it was Wednesday, over the quiz. Dr. Schultz was like, hey guys, on the quiz she had that one question, true or false, should I give all the girls in the class extra credit on this quiz because they're female or whatever? I don't remember the exact wording. And that was sort of like her saying, what the radicals believe, because women face different problems like emotional, hormonal influxes and stuff, and like period cramps. Learning might be more difficult for them than a man. But, for all the women listening, we know that's not true. It may be difficult, we may be in pain, but that pain doesn't take away from our ability to focus. So just because our body is different from a man's doesn't necessarily mean that we are completely different. We're all human and we're equal. We're just different. Different but equal. Diversity is a good thing. Moving on, the liberals believe that the patriarchy has been largely eliminated in Western societies. Sorry about that. That there is a private sphere of individual liberty with which the government and law may not legitimately interfere, and that government must treat men and women by the same rules. So, going back to the quiz example, Dr. Schultz decided to not give all of the girls in the class extra credit because it would not be fair to the classroom as a whole. The conservative feminists, they fall somewhere in between the radical and the liberals. They take bits and pieces of both, and their ideology. Now that I've told you a little bit about the different types of feminism, I want to now go into what makes a feminist. And as you see on the slide, anybody can be a feminist. Male or female, any race, you can be of any religious order or any Christian denomination. There is no specific type of person or category that one must fall under to claim feminism. For example, we've got singer John Legend, author J.K. Rowling, and politician and hopefully our next president of the United States, Hillary Clinton. All three of these people come from different backgrounds, different socioeconomic statuses, different religious beliefs, different environments, just different. And yet, so now that I've told you a little bit about feminism, I'm now going to finally get into my discussion of why feminist jurisprudence is the right view of the law. We see that the feminist jurisprudence studies the law from the perspective of women and focuses on how law affects women. It asks the questions such as what understanding of equality will make it possible for women to have control over their lives in both the private and public spheres. What understanding of equality will provide an adequate grounding for the concept of rights, such as women's rights, can protect both their individual liberty and their identity as women. Feminist jurisprudence champions equality for both sexes, both functionally and legally. From this, one can infer that feminism is an important component to lawmaking. Now, a feminist critical legal theorist that I personally like very much was actually Adelaide Vilmore, and we read her essay, Women, Differences, and Rights as Practices, in class a couple of months ago. She, in this essay, attempts to answer the questions that I just read to you, and begins with her long paper on answering these by proposing the question, what is law? What is law? She argues that the answer to this question is simply that each woman has a voice that deserves to be heard. In this way, her brand of feminism includes not only white women, but those of color as well, but her scope goes even deeper to include disabled and queer women. And queer would be transgender, bisexual, or homosexual. Vilmore argues that despite the differences among women, we are still at the core of our beings female. Our womanness transcends our external shell, and that each woman has the right to speak out about the discrimination that the patriarchy so unfairly thrusts upon women. Furthermore, our womanness, Vilmore asserts, is a paradox. Feminists interested in women's rights and differences among women and between women and men should broaden and diversify their reach to listen to the daily rights talk of all sorts of different women. So, what she's saying here is currently, or at the time of this publication, which was, I want to say 1990, 1991, feminist jurisprudence only really viewed women's issues through the eyes of straight white women. And Vilmore is saying that doesn't cover all of our bases. You know, a woman isn't always white. She's not always straight. We are a diversity. And by only looking through the eyes of a straight white woman, we're being unfair to those of color and the other minorities. So, let me scroll down here a minute. Now that I've discussed what feminist jurisprudence is about, I want to now move on to my biblical analysis of feminist jurisprudence. I have this quote on the PowerPoint that says, it's by Pat Robertson, and he says, feminism encourages women to leave their husbands, kill their children, practice witchcraft, destroy capitalism, and become lesbians. Now, this is sort of a caricature. This is an example of the caricature that has been painted by our society of feminism. Why has this happened? Well, arguing from a feminist standpoint, the patriarchy is trying to crush any sort of resistance against it by women. The patriarchy doesn't see women as men's equals, and they just want to keep women barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. But this isn't how all Christians view feminism. And this is certainly not how Jesus viewed women. And if you look closely at the Old Testament, this isn't how the Israelites viewed women. This isn't how the Israelites were supposed to view women anyway. For example, if you look at Leviticus 19, women who were indentured servants were not blamed for adultery since they were considered to have no choice in the matter. This helped protect women's rights and keep them from being powerless. Numbers 5 has to keep jealous husbands from irrationally blaming their wives for unfaithfulness that the wives did not commit. The law required a series of tests that would protect innocent women and only implicate a woman if she had an overwhelming sense of guilt. This is like what we talked about in class on Wednesday, and Dr. Schultz said that the man, if the wife was innocent, then the husband could not divorce her. And moving on, in Deuteronomy, divorce laws prevented a first husband from remarrying a woman after she had been married again. This protected women from being passed around like property. This is found in Deuteronomy 24. So, even thousands of years ago, we have this problem of women being viewed as objects for sex, objects as property. They weren't human in the eyes of men, and Old Testament law and God, Yahweh, He is trying to show the Israelites that women are human beings too. They may be different, they may have the ability to sustain life in their womb and give birth, but they're still human. Our anatomy is different from men's, yes, but overall we're human beings, all of us, and God views us as both man and woman being made in His image, and He doesn't play favorites. He loves both men and women the same. And we see Jesus' love, we see God's love in the New Testament when Jesus forgives the woman at the well instead of condemning her and telling her that she's unclean and terrible and condemned to hell or whatever. He loves her. He forgives her. Another example is when Martha was freaking out over her dirty house and yelling at her sister Mary, who was sitting at Jesus' feet listening to Him teach. And Jesus says to her something along the lines of, "Martha, don't worry about your house. Come sit at my feet. Come listen to me teach." Her spiritual life was far more important to Jesus than a dirty house. And then equality in the Bible. As we see in Luke 10:38 through 42, women, like men, have the right to be educated. In Galatians 3:26 through 28, women's value is equal to that of men's. And in Matthew 20 through 22, women can receive medical treatment. So, women are human beings, and they have the same right to... So in closing, my personal view is that the equality of the sexes is a good thing, that this was how God originally planned for it to be, but after Adam and Eve sinned, He cursed the sexes to a lifelong battle for equality, as seen in Genesis 3:15. Nowhere does God state that man is better than woman. He made both male and female in His image, and to be partners to rule and subdue the creation, like Superman and Wonder Woman, who are both two strong equals, not like Batman and Robin, who are